dead! I saw you die!
I was faking. I used ninja focus to slow my heart rate down.
What are you doing?
I'm burying you.
I'm alive, man! I'm alive!
You're waking the neighbors!
No!
Shut up!
No!
Now I'm gonna play your drum set. Close your eyes. Let the dirt just shower over you. This is your fault.
Hey, Ryan. Hi, this is Sarah Palin.
Ryan, Donald Trump Jr.
Hogs to win seal. Hey, everybody, I want y'all to check out a fellow Marine spawn catch.
My name is Ted Nugent, and I got a call from my buddy Ryan F. Samuels, and he wants me to tell you that he's a working hard, playing all-American son of a who is celebrating God, family, country.
Welcome to the Ryan Samuels Show, one of the top political podcasts in the United States, where we have a healthy distrust for government and mainstream media. The Ryan Samuels Show is a raw, unfiltered look at American politics. Follow on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Here is your host, Ryan Samuels.
Hello, Patriots. So, Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard University, who went to Congress and could not condemn the calling of genocide of Jews, has been in major political hot water. She has been hounded to resign, and she wouldn't, and Harvard wouldn't force her. And eventually she did, because she got caught plagiarizing multiple incidents. Now, plagiarism is a big deal. It's you know, as a Harvard graduate, to steal somebody else's work and not cite them for it, that's like something that you do in high school. That's something you do at the local community college. That's not something you do at a pristine university like Harvard, which is what makes it pristine, is that these people are creating their own ideas, creating their own work in their chosen field, not stealing it from somebody else. But she's been charged like 6 times. She's been shown favoritism, presumably because of the color of her skin, and that she reached her achievement through affirmative action is the rumor on the street. Do I know that for sure? No, but that's the rumor on the street. So when she got called before Congress because the protests that were happening on Harvard's campus were just atrocious and appalling. I mean, a Jewish student was attacked. They were calling for the murder of all Jews. And so she was called before Congress, and they're saying, like, hey, what are you doing about this? What are you doing to protect these students? And she really did not give a straight answer. Let's listen to this.
Dr. Gay, a Harvard student calling for the mass murder of African Americans is not protected free speech at Harvard, correct?
Our commitment to free speech...
It's a yes or no question. Is that corrected? Is that okay for students to call for the mass murder of African Americans at Harvard? Is that protected free speech?
Our commitment to free speech
It's a yes or no question. Let me ask you this. You are president of Harvard, so I assume you're familiar with the term intifada, correct?
I've heard that term, yes.
And you understand that the use of the term intifada in the context of the Israeli-Arab conflict is indeed a call for violent armed resistance against the state of Israel, including violence against civilians and the genocide of Jews. Are you aware of that?
That type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
And there have been multiple marches at Harvard with students chanting, quote, there is only one solution, intifada revolution, and, quote, globalize the intifada. Is that correct?
I've heard that thoughtless, reckless, and hateful language on our campus, yes.
So based upon your testimony, you understand that this call for intifada is to commit genocide against the Jewish people in Israel and globally, correct?
I will say again, that type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you
But
not
our
say here that it
values
is against the
also-
code of conduct at Harvard?
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment,
Does that speech
and
not
intimidation.
cross that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide of Jews and the elimination of Israel?
When
You
that speech-
testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that
When
speech
speech-
according to the code of conduct or not?
We embrace a commitment to free expression and give a wide berth to free expression, even of views that are objectionable.
You and I
outrageous,
both know
and
that's not the
offensive.
case. You were aware that Harvard ranked dead last when it came to free speech. Are you not aware of that report?
As I observed earlier, I reject that characterization.
It's the
of our
data shows
campus.
it's true. And isn't it true that Harvard previously rescinded multiple offers of admissions for applicants and accepted freshmen for sharing offensive memes, racist statements, sometimes as young as 16 years old? Did Harvard not rescind those offers of admission?
That long predates my time as president.
But you
so I can't
understand
speak.
that Harvard made that decision to rescind those offers of admission.
I have no reason to contradict the facts as you present them here.
Correct, because it's a fact. You're also aware that a Winthrop House faculty dean was let go over who he chose to legally represent, correct? That was while you were dean.
That is an incorrect characterization of what transpired.
What's the characterization?
I'm not going to get into details about a personnel matter.
Well, let me ask you this. Will admissions offers be rescinded or any disciplinary action be taken against students or applicants who say, from the river to the sea or intifada, advocating for the murder of Jews?
As I've said, that type of hateful, reckless, offensive speech is personally abhorrent to me.
So she's basically trying to say that it's abhorrent to me. However, I protect free speech, right? I mean, that's basically the argument, and that's a good argument if it were true. The only speech that is protected at Harvard is the speech that aligns with the leftist political ideology. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. And, you know, Claudine Gay is a 100% far leftist Democrat, like extreme. But here is an article that was in the Harvard Crimson, which is a Harvard paper or magazine, or it's a Harvard publication, that they talk about the differences and the bias as it comes to free speech. It's called Harvard's Free Speech Fallacy by Karen Hajar, the Crimson opinion writer. This is from April 17th of 2021. So this was a number of years ago. This is not in response to Claudine Gay's testimony or any of the significant things that we saw. Harvard University, one of the foremost academic institutions in the world, where only 3% of the faculty is conservative. 3% of the faculty is conservative. If academia is collaborative pursuit to truth that relies on a diverse set of views, then ideological homogeneity of any kind is poison for a healthy academic community, not to mention detrimental to free speech. It's not shocking that I, a right-of-center student on campus, would be worried about freedom of speech given that I am the ideological minority. Yet embedded in my conservative leanings is the belief that private institutions like Harvard can technically do whatever they want. While I think this dire ideological imbalance among the faculty of arts and sciences is detrimental to the quality of education, I will not protest if Harvard, as a private entity, wants it to stay this way. However, the real issue is that Harvard is at odds with the very free speech principles that it has defined for itself and is doing little to address the infractions. Now, that's a common argument. I hear that all the time, that Harvard's a private institution. They can do whatever they want. But these mega universities get mega tax dollars from the federal government. So if the federal government wants to go to these universities and say that, hey, listen, you need to stop your students talking about this, saying this, or we're going to take away your millions and millions of dollars of funding and grants every year. They therefore hold leverage over the university. So you're never going to know. So that's not a truly private institution. It's a publicly funded institution. Not 100%, but it gives the government leverage over the university. Therefore, that university loses its autonomous record on free speech. They're not. They're intertwined with the federal government. It's chaos. It's the same thing that we saw in the social media. Yeah, they're private companies. They could do whatever they want. But what was happening in the end? The federal government, the FBI, was coercing them and forcing them to remove content they did not like. Harvard surprisingly has formal guidelines for free speech. I didn't even know these existed. Upon asking my friends whether they had heard about the guidelines, each one answered in the negative. They are the type of rules I would have expected to hear at freshman orientation or at the beginning of every academic year, but didn't. The administration, to its credit, evoked the spirit of these guidelines in some of their statements. Dean of the College of the Rakesh Khurana, for instance, made a statement in 2019 saying that some Harvard students see those with differing opinions as underserving of our attention, our respect, or our compassion. The administration has also allowed the attendance of certain controversial speakers, yet actualizations of these guidelines at the faculty and student level is yet to be seen. FAS asserts that the free interchange of ideas is vital to the university's mission of discovering and disseminating ideas through research, teaching, and learning. This vital purpose is drastically restricted by the utter lack of ideological variety among its faculty. 3% of the Harvard faculty is conservative. 3% of the Harvard faculty is conservative. The agenda that's going to be pushed is whoever the ruling class is at Harvard. Isn't that the big argument about critical race theory? That because white people have the majority, they are therefore the ruling class and will ultimately suppress the minority? I mean, is that what we're seeing at Harvard? So Claudine Gay is a far leftist. So here's her statement back in May 31st of 2020 about George Floyd. This is a official statement from Harvard University. It's the Inequality in America Initiative, Harvard University Faculty of Arts and Sciences. Claudine's statement on the death of George Floyd. May 31st, 2020. Dear FAS community, like many of you, I have watched in pain and horror the events of unfolding across the nation this week, triggered by the callous and depraved actions of a white police officer in Minneapolis. We have been here before too many times, and that familiarity is part of the heartbreak and outrage of this moment. Even as the global fight against the pandemic has forged new bonds and inspired acts of profound generosity, we are confronted again by old hatreds and the enduring legacies of anti-Black racism and equality. It's a familiarity that makes me deeply restless for change. Part of that change is the work we do here to learn and listen across the lines of difference and to build a community grounded in trust and respect. Part of that change is our work to trace the roots of inequality and its pernicious effects, and to equip our students with the understanding and insight needed to create a better world. The understanding and insights to create a better world. What understanding and insights? The understanding of your opinion or your false political ideology that the George Floyd incident had anything to do with race, that every white police officer is racist, that all white people are racist. Is that the understanding and insight needed to create a better world? Now this is the time to lean into our mission with resolve and a sense of urgency. I write this knowing that for some in our community, and I count myself among them, the events in Minneapolis, Brunswick, Louisville, and beyond feel anything but abstract. To the contrary, the headlines stir an acute sense of vulnerability. We are reminded again how even our most mundane activities like running, which is something I'm passionate about, can carry inordinate risk at a moment when all I want to do is gather my teenage son into my arms. I am painfully aware of how little shelter that provides. It shouldn't be this way. Our presence and our voices make these experiences visible, and that too is part of the change. Together with the many who know these fears only vicariously, we must actively work to build a more just society where no one is above the law and where each of us is treated with the dignity that is our birthright. The death of George Floyd is a singular tragedy for his family, the mother he cried out for, and those who cared about him. For those of us who did not know him, we experienced this as another kind of tragedy, as we did yet another name to all those, like Breonna Taylor and Tony McDade, that have come to symbolize the brutality of racist violence in this country. It reminds us of the distance we still must travel to truly be the nation of our ideals. The thought that distance can be overwhelming and exhausting, but the fight for change requires our resilience. I urge you to lean on this community as you lean into the work that brought you here and the better world it seeks to create. Rather a biased, opinionated statement, just full of nonsense. That's not even true. I mean, what racial issues has Claudine ever faced? Besides rising to the prominence of Harvard University and being investigated for plagiarism, but giving special treatment due to her ethnicity. Was she qualified to become the president of Harvard to begin with? Or did that just present an opportunity to make history and say, this is the first black president of Harvard? What is the reality of what's going on at Harvard? What is the reality of free speech? Free speech only pertains to the speech that the administration likes. But that's not the speech that needs to be protected. The speech that needs to be protected is the speech that nobody likes. And yes, that includes chanting for infantata or whatever. You could call that hate speech, although there's no such thing as hate speech. There's hateful actions, there's violence, but words do not violate the rights of another. Therefore, they cannot be criminalized. Now, if the words you use cause somebody to get injured, in the famous can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater, well, you can. You can stand in a crowded movie theater and yell fire. It's not illegal. But if somebody gets hurt, then you can be charged with involuntary manslaughter or whatever charge they want to apply at that time. But the simple act of the speech is not what is illegal. It's that you can be held accountable for the speech should something happen. Now, would Claudine Gay accept conservative students standing on the corner chanting that George Floyd was a criminal, he held a gun to a pregnant lady's stomach and threatened to kill her and her baby, chanting that he actually died of a fentanyl overdose, according to the autopsy report, where he had no injuries and no crushed esophagus, nothing to indicate whatsoever that it was the knee of Officer Chauvin who killed George Floyd. There's no evidence of that. Now, I am a former police officer, and I can tell you that I watched the video, and I will admit and I will say that Derek Chauvin should have got off him earlier from what I saw. And I don't I hate to Monday morning quarterback because I don't know the entire totality of the circumstances. But from what I saw in that situation, there was a moment where George Floyd just wasn't moving. Okay, the threat has stopped. He's handcuffed. Get off him, maybe leave your hand on his back, pick him up. There's other ways to do that. I'm not saying that he was 100% right or justified in what he did, but their evidence does not suggest that his actions are the ones that caused the death of George Floyd. But in Claudine's eyes, because she's a radical leftist lunatic, she decided that it was simply because Derek Chauvin was a white police officer, as she says in her statement. It wasn't the statements in front of Congress where she refused to acknowledge that it's against Harvard's policy. It's clearly making verbal threats is against Harvard's policy. It's against any school's policy or any workplace's policy. She wouldn't acknowledge that because the leftist ideology is against Israel. The leftist ideology is in support of Hamas and Palestine. That's why she's protecting it. If they were a bunch of MAGA reporters calling for the death of liberals and the mass genocide of liberals, would Claudine allow it? The answer is absolutely not, because it's biased. We're all subject to our own biases. And when 3% of the staff has a totally different political ideology, that's tyranny of the majority. And that's going to trickle down naturally and project on all the students, which is why you're mathematically higher to be more left-leaning when you leave college. Number one, because you're not getting a proper education. You're not. The days of the classical education with grammar, logic, and rhetoric, the trivium and the quadrivium are over. There is no more classical education. There are facts drilled down and facts that you're told to learn and remember, not investigate. The best way to investigate a historical event is to look at primary sources. Now, a primary source is like if you're looking at the American Revolution, for instance, or the writing of the Declaration of Independence, you look at what John Adams wrote in his journal or what Thomas Jefferson wrote in a letter, because that is the person who's actually there. That's not what they're doing anymore. The people who already looked at the primary sources, interpreted them, maybe twisted them to their own political ideology, compile them and explain them, and then tell them this is what it means. That's education these days. That's what education has become. And it is absolutely, it's completely improper. That's not how an education is supposed to be. And education is supposed to be, we're going to give you the tools and the resources to research, write, form an argument from the facts that you have found, not the facts that have been given to you by a so-called expert doctor. Even all the expert doctors in this country, the PhDs, they didn't research primary sources. They researched what was already interpreted and given to them and said that this is the way that it is. That's why our education system is just completely screwed. But here's Claudine Gay resigning, and this is her, I believe this is the last video that she did kind of explaining her position.
Our university embraces a commitment to free expression. That commitment extends even to views that many of us find objectionable, even outrageous. We do not punish or sanction people for expressing such views, but that is a far cry for endorsing them. It's in the exercise of our freedom to speak that we reveal our characters, and we reveal the character of our institution. We can issue public pronouncements declaring the rightness of our own points of view and vilify those who disagree. Or we can choose to talk and to listen with care and humility, to seek deeper understanding, and to meet one another with compassion. We can inflame an already volatile situation on our campus, or we...
Like George Floyd? You don't think that your statement about the George Floyd situation inflamed an already volatile situation?
Can focus our attention where it belongs, on the unfolding tragedy thousands of miles away. We can ask ourselves how, as human beings, we can be helpful to people who are desperately trying to protect themselves and their families, people who are fighting to survive. How we go forward as a community is up to each of us. I've spent most of my career at this institution. I have seen the people of Harvard come together despite their differences. I know that we
3% come together with the 97%.
are capable of meeting this moment and meeting one another with grace.
So like I was saying, she was forced to resign not because of her position on free speech. Her position on the free speech outraged a lot of people, which put her under a microscope. And while under that microscope, they found a dozen instances of plagiarism. Embattled Harvard President Claudine Gay faces fresh calls to step down after 6 new plagiarism charges arise, bringing total number to over a dozen. A dozen. 12 incidents in her academics that she stole the words of other people and tried to claim them as her own. This isn't one journal article or something where she forgot to properly cite something. These are serious, like, you didn't write this. Somebody else wrote this. And the problem is she was lifted through these systems and never had to learn the proper way to do it. Because of her identity, she was given special privileges. She was given special acceptance over others. Now, Harvard did go to the Supreme Court recently, and they were brought on charges of discrimination with their policies on accepting students based on the color of their skin. They lost. They lost. You cannot give people preference over the color of their skin. That's actual racism. That's literal racism. And that's what Harvard was doing. So if you were a person of color, you got accepted before somebody else in order to get your numbers up, which is just ludicrous and insane to accept somebody. And they fought it. They kept fighting this. But the Supreme Court came back and said absolutely not. They won the district courts. They won everything. And Harvard was offended by it. They were completely offended that they could not do this. You know, diversity, equity, inclusion is a waste of time, as Warren Buffett says. It's a complete waste of time. It's a complete waste of money. It's a complete waste of resources. It does not do anything to benefit a company to spend all of this money to specifically seek out people of certain genders or certain background in order to hire them or put them into, I mean, or put them into positions of power. Now, Claudine Gay, well, I'm going to tell you, she was the president-elect at the time that this came back, and she made a statement. Let's listen to this.
The Supreme Court's decision on college and university admissions will change how we pursue the educational benefits of diversity. But our commitment to
there are zero educational benefits to diversity. There are none.
That work remains steadfast. It's essential to who we are and the mission that we are here to advance. For nearly 9 years, Harvard vigorously defended our admissions process and our belief that we all benefit from learning, living, and working alongside people of different backgrounds and experiences. We will comply with the court's decision, but it does not change our values. We continue to believe deeply that a thriving, diverse intellectual community is essential to academic excellence and critical to shaping the next generation of leaders. Every day, this is borne out in Harvard classrooms, where our students have the chance to put their ideas into conversation with other points of view, experiences, and perspectives. To our current students, you make excellence possible, and you belong at Harvard. Never doubt that. For many, this decision feels deeply personal. It means the real possibility that opportunities will be foreclosed.
Opportunities are open to those who earn it on merit. It's a meritocracy. Not because you're born of this, you have privilege. That's racism.
But at Harvard, it has also strengthened our resolve to continue opening doors. To our future students, know that we want you here. We are eager to welcome you to our community. I know that you have a lot of questions. We do too. In the coming weeks, we'll be working to understand the decision and its implications for our policies. While we don't have all the answers about what's next, we do know that we will move forward together.
That's the world we live in. Merit does not matter. Only if you identify as something, or you're part of some social class, or some ethnicity, or you have a certain color of skin, you receive benefits. Or if you're a certain political ideology, you can say whatever you want. But if you're the other side, whoa, shut them down. Whoa, take that off the website. Don't let them post that. Rip that person's page down on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. We don't like that. That's hate speech. But they can call for the genocide of Jews, and it's okay. Thank you for tuning in. This is Ryan Samuels. Make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe button, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to The Ryan Samuels Show. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.